Good afternoon. Dan Diker here together with Maurice Hirsch and other JCPA experts. This is Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs Wartime Diplomacy Center, bringing you latest developments, analysis, assessment, context, and perspective. In this ongoing multi-front war, we're fighting delegitimization, disinformation, and trying to get you the right information, analysis, and context. Context, dear friends, family, and colleagues of the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs across the seas and around the world. Context is what's missing, and that's where we hope to be able to create some value added here as we fight this disinformation war, which I think in our estimate is one of the just as serious as the military war on the ground. I'm delighted to be here with Maurice Hirsch, and today we are really honored to have a senior member of our JCPA Fellows team, and that's Dr. Jacques Neriah, who is a longtime national security expert. He was the national security advisor to former Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, and he has continued to advise in Arabic and in English and in French many other government leaders in our country, and advise other foreign officials and private think tank and policy experts around the world about the regional aspect, the Middle East aspect, the Arab world aspect, culture, language. How do we understand this region around us? And today, those are the questions that are being asked following the savage, barbaric attack on Shabbat, on Simchat Torah, that today the latest number is what, 1,200?
1,200.
1,200 dead. That is tantamount to 11 9/11s in American population terms. Let's go right to Jacques Neriah. Dr. Neriah, thank you for joining us from afar. And I know you've been doing television and press all day. What has been the major point of contention or discussion as we sort of zoom out on day 4 of this ongoing and evolving wartime situation opposite the Iranian regime and its Hamas proxy?
Well, good afternoon. I would first begin by saying that if you hear a siren, you just go to a safe place. This happens. Just a few minutes ago, we had the siren in Tel Aviv area. So I think that this would be the best thing to do, to be in a safe place. Otherwise, the two main questions that everybody today is concerned with is what is the goal of this war? What is the Israeli goal of this war? And secondly, in this framework, what are the chances that Hezbollah and Iran intervene actively in the war against Israel? So concerning the first question, the assessment is the following. We are going after Hamas. We want to get rid of Hamas. Everybody now knows that there was a failure in the philosophy of treating Hamas, the philosophy of containment, of feeding Hamas and giving him money, giving him means, and telling that he is most interested in economy, he is deterred by Israel, has proven to be wrong. So we have to get rid of the threat, because had we not intervened on Saturday, we would have lost a big swath of territory in the south to the hands of the terrorists. Their intention was, in fact, not only to kill the Jews over there around Gaza, but to take over the control of all the area from Kerem Shalom till Erez and inside Israel, and if possible, to reach Hatzerim, near the base of Hatzerim, near Beersheba, and of course, in due time, to go northward toward Ashdod and Ashkelon. So this was the initial plan of Hamas. And were it not the heroism of the Israeli civilians around the Gaza Strip, I think that we would be today in a different situation. It took some time for the Israeli army to reorganize and to take control of the area. And right now, except for a few incidents here and there, the whole area has been safe. The reservists have been called, about 360,000 most of them to the southern front, and they have been training and they are preparing for deployment and for the next phase of the war. Right now, this will not happen, or at least it will happen parallel to the fact that we have to bury our deads. We have to just assess the situation concerning the wounded and see that the job of looking after corpses and after people killed in the area is not finished. There are areas where where the army has not reached, has not got there, and I think that this is important to know. The goal finally is to after those airstrikes, which are targeting Hamas areas, not Hamas targets, have Hamas areas. So we are just the area of Rimal in the north has been just bombed, and it was reduced to rubble, and the banks, the financial institution, and the police centers, and the Air Force is just striking step after step and just gaining territory, and creating, of course, a panic in the Palestinian population, the same Palestinian population who just claimed very high that they were so happy to receive the terrorists coming back with hostages and threw over those flowers and sweets, and are the same now, just complaining that they are in a humanitarian plight. Our goal is to get rid of Hamas. And if we need to reach the seashore in Gaza, we will do that. It will take some time. We are not here on a promenade. This will take some time. This will take, we are talking about months. It's not 2 months. It's definitely a war effort. We are in a state of war. This we have to remember. This is the one thing that interests most of the observers and most of the journalists and press people who ask me what is the future, how is it going to unfold. Second question is about the idea of what is about Hisbah. Today, with the information that has leaked from Lebanon and other places, we know for sure that this plan was devised by Kani, head of the Quds division in Lebanon, together with the leaders of Hamas and the leaders of the Palestinian Jihad, and of course, the idea was, and Hezbollah, of course, and the idea was to repeat or to copy the plan that Hezbollah has devised since 2011, meaning that just going and taking over the obstacle, and after the obstacle, just to take over a few localities and just prove to the world and to Israel that Israeli territory can be conquered. The fact is,
Jacques, can you help us understand how we know that the strategic objective and plan was a function of Kani, the IRG, the Quds Force, the Quds Force commander in Lebanon? Do we have intelligence?
Yes, it was published. It was published in Lebanese papers. I follow the Lebanese papers, and one full article was by the L'Orient Le Jour paper in French. A very good article written about the whole operation. And in my view, what happened is that the Hamas just preceded the Hezbollah. Had we had on Saturday an attack from the north and from the south, we would not be here discussing today. This is the situation. So by the striking first, Hamas has in fact neutralized the surprise from Hezbollah, and Hezbollah, in my view, has lost the war. And Hezbollah right now is deterred not only by Israel, because Israel has changed the equation of reacting to Hezbollah's provocation. For each provocation, Israeli is firing back. We are firing back, and so Hezbollah is using Palestinian factions in Lebanon, Palestinian factions in Syria, in order to hide behind and saying that he's not involved, even though that he's taking responsibility for attacks, missile attacks against Israeli targets.
Right. Jacques, I want to ask a question at this particular point about about what they call in Hebrew, it's deterrence. In English, in Hebrew, it's al-ta'ah. At this particular moment, there is a disagreement about the state of Israel's deterrence from a psychological point of view and from a physical point of view. Though there are those that say because Israel's burying its dead, licking its wounds, still picking up all of the damaged vehicles and cleaning up these savaged 24, 25 communities around the Gaza Strip, that now would be a time that Israel would be perceived as extremely weak in the eyes of Hisbah, Iranian regime, and the rest of the Arab world. On the other hand, you have said that Israel is already creating a certain balance of deterrence opposite the Hezbollah. Can you explain to me how your thinking is working here, that Israel is picking up its deterrent capability now?
Well, Dan, since the negotiations on the maritime border, we had provocations from Hezbollah that were never answered by Israel. Be it the drones that were sent against the drilling rig, be it attacks on the cameras on the wall, be it 600 and more actions where Hezbollah, the operatives were present beyond the blue border, the blue line, the border between us and Lebanon. The tent that was erected 2 months ago, and then the firing against Hardov and firing again in the Rajal area. All this was without response from Israel. And the interpretation of Hezbollah was, and we heard it very clearly, loud and clear, said by Hassan Nasrallah, he said that Israel is very weak. And I will remind you the sentence he said. He said, had Israel been what it was 30 years ago, and if Lebanon were exactly 30 years ago, Israel would have acted differently. And then we are now changing the equation. We are coming back 30 years, maybe too late, but now for every action of Hezbollah, we are responding. And if Hezbollah is going to expand its actions inside Israeli territory, then we will go further. Who understand that better than us? The Lebanese population. The Lebanese population from Bint Jbeil area bordering Israel back to westward to the coastal area, we have a big traffic jam. Hundreds of thousands of Lebanese are leaving the area towards Beirut, understanding that this might be a place where Israel will have to act. And right now, I think that what holds Hezbollah, there are two things. One thing is the resurgence of Daesh inside Syria. And Hassan Nasrallah, in his last speech, insinuated that this was a growing danger, meaning that he would have to direct some of his units, some of his forces back into Syria, which would certainly weaken his position vis-a-vis Israel. And the second, we are not forgetting, on the contrary, the presence of the American fleet coming towards Israel, and the threat that was given by Joe Biden towards and saying, "Stop! Don't do it! Don't do it!" I mean, and he intends, in fact, to intervene, because the Americans have understood that behind this scheme stands Iran. Iran wanted to create an area where to surround Israel with fire from Lebanon, from Syria, from the West Bank, and inside Israel if possible, and the Gaza Strip. Do not forget also firing from Iran and from Yemen. So the American presence is a deterrent. So the whole equation right now is different. Hezbollah understand that Israel from within is reborn. The schism that existed in the last 9 months, which led him to understand that we are weak and we are not going to respond. Now it's a different situation. It's a different equation. He sees very clearly that we are there fighting, and we are fighting all united, and we have also the full backing and support of the United States.
Jacques, do you see the United States engaging in military confrontation under any circumstance? And B, do you think that from Israel's standpoint, from a deterrent standpoint, would be a prudent move?
Yeah, Dan, let me remind you, in the first Gulf War, we had no Iron Dome. The only Iron Dome was given by the Americans. The Americans sent a team here, and they were just deployed in Israel, and they fired Patriots at the Iraqi missiles. So, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that there would be an American military intervention siding Israel. But in my view, if you analyze the task force that is coming towards Israel and in the Mediterranean, you see that there are some ships that their specialty is to intercept ballistic missiles. And if this is so, they believe, the Americans believe, and we should accept this also, that there might be a chance that ballistic missiles would be fired against Israel. From where these ballistic missiles could come, from Iran, from Lebanon, deep inside Lebanon, Iraq also, and of course Yemen. So this is why the American fleet is there, composed as it is. So in my view, if this happens, we will see an American intervention protecting the airspace of Israel.
All that, Jack, if I may just ask, all that is a very rational argument. It explains why Hisbah would possibly be deterred, why this would somehow be a block for Iran. But are we actually talking about rational thinkers? The attack from Gaza will do nothing good for the Gazan people in any way, shape, or form. The attacks of Hisbah on our northern border is going to do nothing for the Lebanese people. They are already, Lebanon is a failed country. They are bankrupt. They are incapable of repaying their debt. They have partial electricity. How is all of that going to play into this idea of Iran really trying to do everything it can to, let's put it on the table, to scuttle any type of normalization idea between Israel, between Saudi Arabia, and that wider picture of the axis of evil trying to fight the axis of peace?
One of the reasons that Iran has taken this opportunity of waging war against Israel is to stop the process of normalization between Israel and the Arab state, and certainly between Israel and Saudi Arabia. This is definitely a goal. Now, if we go back to Hezbollah has a certain autonomy in Lebanon in the decision-making process. He doesn't have to consult all the time and take the advice of Tehran, but it is certainly in very radical and critical issues, he does that. Now, Hezbollah has put a red line, has said there is a red line. The red line is the ground incursion into Gaza. If we go inside Gaza with ground units, most probably Hezbollah will intervene at the price of being targeted by the Americans and at the price of suffering losses from Israel. This is as I see the equation. Now we are talking about the Lebanese population, the Lebanese people. Who are they for Hezbollah? Who are they? First of all, he is a Shiite. He's protecting his own audience. He doesn't care about the Christians in the north. He doesn't care about the Druze in the north. And these are the ones that are right now shouting, don't shoot at Lebanon, don't involve Lebanon, don't do anything that would endanger Lebanon. Of course they are interested. Of course it's a failed state. But would you like to see the failed state go back to the Stone Age? No.
And do you think that Iran would take the opportunity, given the tremendous force that's built up against them and the American intervention, and to nonetheless engage in that provocation of shooting ballistic missiles? I think that's something which is a development which many of our audience wouldn't have necessarily thought of and considered until now.
I agree with you that this is really far-reaching, but didn't the Iranian fire more than 100 ballistic missiles on American bases after the killing of Qasem Soleimani? They did. What was the answer of the United States? Nothing, nada. So they believe that they can do that also, to just target Israel with their precision-guided missiles and do a lot of damage before the Americans can react, if at all. They can take this chance if they feel that Hezbollah is in danger, that Hezbollah is being overwhelmed by Israeli forces, or Israel has decided to take over the whole space in South Lebanon and just I would say target the Dahya and do with the Dahya what it did in 2006 and maybe more. So this is a situation where we could get very easily into a regional conflict. Remember also that the Russians have signaled that if something of the sort would happen, then they would also intervene. I don't believe that the Russians would intervene right now. They're being involved so deep in the Ukrainian war, but definitely they can help. They can help in assistance, in intelligence, and so on. So the flare-up right now is in its beginning. It could develop very quickly into something very serious and just expand into a regional war, where we would see the Iran and its proxies involved, and we see also the US involved on the Israeli side. This is, in my view, the analysis right now of the situation. And it depends very much about what we are going to do and how quick are we going to act in Gaza. Because if we do that and we just try to limit the damage to the war between us and Hamas, I don't think this is possible. Yesterday night, I heard the speech of Khalid Mash'al from Hamas. He was inciting the Arab world to wake up and help us. We Palestinians are fighting for you. He addressed the Jordanians by saying that he is saving Al-Aqsa, whereas we know that the custodian of Al-Aqsa are the Jordanians themselves. He was asking the Syrians, the Lebanese, all the Arab world to unite and to join the effort against Israel. And right now we don't see anybody moving even a finger. So as I had first earlier a conversation with Maurice, the solidarity in the Arab world is very conditional, and it's conditional of the interest. And one of these interests is just to stop this Hamas who looks very much like Daesh in his behavior, and Daesh is exactly an enemy that most of the Arab states don't want to have in their territory.
Jacques, it looks like that this mass murder on Saturday and the evolving war has broken, destroyed, and massacred some conceptions that we've been living with for many decades. One of the conceptions of what you just pointed out, which is the false notion of what they call Arab unity, when we've seen really, frankly, we've seen since the late 1970s and 80s that Arab countries work really in service of their own national interest, not around the Palestinian issue and not around Hamas and not about Hisbah, but in fact in their own interests. And we've seen over the last decades that the rejection by many Arab leaders of Yasser Arafat and his destabilizing activities became clear to observers of the Middle East. Today, after Saturday, it seems that what was known as the Oslo conception, which was a full conception in Israel and in the United States, has been broken, meaning that we could buy off the Hamas to create, in helping them stabilize or run Hamastan for large dollars, which they pocketed largely and kept oppressing their own population. It seems that the notion that we're in a territorial conflict is finished. We're in a strategic conflict, an existential conflict, in a sense, as we saw on Saturday on Shabbat. What's your sense about that, about the changing of conflict paradigm from territorial conflict to, let's call it, religious or existential conflict opposite Iran, a regime and its proxies?
I always said that we live in a very, very difficult neighborhood. We are not in Switzerland. We are not in Norway. We are not in Greenland. We are in the Middle East surrounded by enemies, and we have to be aware that they don't want us. They don't want us at all. And if they could, if Israel would have shown how weak we are, or if we were weak, it would be for them the chance of to overrun us and just ask us just to leave, or push us to leave through the sea or wherever. This is very hard to say after years of negotiations with the Palestinians. It's very hard for me to accept that, but this is the case. I mean, this is the case, the refusal of accepting Israel as a Jewish democratic state, free Jewish democratic state. In my conversation today with one of the leading columnists in Egypt, a Palestinian, I said it very clearly. You're calling us all the time the state of the occupation. We are not a state of occupation. We are on our own land. We are on our own, and more than that, you have recognized in a letter that I have received from Arafat itself, you have recognized Israel as the Israeli state. You have to call us an Israeli state to specify that we are an Israeli state and not an occupation state. You were occupied by Egypt in Gaza. You were occupied by Jordan in the West Bank. You were in the refugee camps where 750,000 Jews from the Arab lands came back to Israel. You are limited in Lebanon. You cannot work in the Lebanese who are Palestinians who are in Lebanon cannot work in 95 professions. It is forbidden for you to do that. The only ones who gave you anything of a national identity, who just gave you some rights, are the Israelis, and this is the price that we are paying. Now, on another field, this surprise attack. I'm not going to go into the surprise itself. This is a study that has to be done separately and which will be done certainly after the war. But that's something that have to be hammered right now. One is the fact that we had a failure in technology. We thought that technology would protect us in the war. We invested more than 4 billion shekels in creating a wall that served for nothing. It came a bulldozer and some explosive, and it was all out. And then we had those soldiers sitting with their cameras and overlooking the fence, and suddenly there was no cameras because the control tower, one control tower, was blown up, and that was darkness. So there's and then we realized that we needed people to fight. You need small people to fight. We saw kibbutzim surviving by 3 people fighting the terrorists. So we have to go back to the old manners and forget about too much technology. Too much technology is too bad. And then there's the failure, I would say, the whole war machine of Israel failed in the first hours. It took more than 6 hours for the army to intervene, to come to help the citizens. This has to be learned. This has to be learned and studied, and see after the war who were the responsible, all the responsible, from the prime minister to the last officer who was in charge in the Gaza Strip. They will all have to explain very difficult questions, very dire questions, and say, why did this happen? How did this happen?
Absolutely. Maurice, you have another question?
Unbelievable. I think what you're saying for us, Jacques, it is very hard to digest, because it means that what the Americans, for example, have been telling us about it, the idea of a two-state solution based on technology and a Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria, is really a non-starter. It's something that can't happen. And it's really, as Dan said before, breaking all these conceptions that we've had for the last 30 years and understanding that we've led ourselves down a path where we've basically been fooling ourselves into a false situation, which on Shabbat morning, Simchat Torah morning, and 1,200 people murdered has now broken that conception. And now we have to see, even after we move into Gaza, even after we get rid of Hamas in Gaza, that next step is going to be something which really does need to be very carefully calculated and examined. Let's not forget, Dan, that Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority and Fatah aren't necessarily different in their ideology as regards Israel, and so that has to be taken into account. if we ever discuss again the situation of an independent force, definitely controlling the high ground that overlooks Israel's entire coastal plain, 80% of our population and our industry. This is the damage of Shabbat. I think will be very, very far-reaching, and it would be a mistake to stop.
We cannot rely anymore on towers, on cameras only. We have to be realistic. We have to have some people around those towers, people who are trained. Imagine most of the kibbutzim there, the army took the weapons from there. There were basically no M16s in the area, only pistols. And now, if you look at the West Bank, and the information comes very, very, very difficult to believe, is that the idea of all those Palestinians in the Jenin refugee camps who are now trained as terrorists, they are thinking about how to go and take over some of the places where Jews are living isolated on a high ground or whatever. So this is what we are facing right now, and we have to be very careful and very aware of this possibility, because this could be real. And then we'll have to realize how did we do that? Why didn't we react beforehand? How did we not prepare ourselves? We have, unfortunately, I say all the time, we are living in a bad neighborhood, and this bad neighborhood, if you don't have a bat in your hand, you are really weak.
It's really true, Jacques, and I think it requires a tremendous amount of domestic unity and rethinking within Israel in order to create that unity, because the brand, the standard discourse about Israel in the West, and even in this U.S. administration, is they call it the two-state solution brand. I mean, it's a brand like an automobile. And in order to undo that, which Saturday's massacre was helpful in undoing that, this is going to take an awful lot of policy work, a lot of internal national discourse work and unity in order to say that collapsed. It almost destroyed us, and now we have to think of another way of living with our Palestinian neighbors in Judea and Samaria, as well as to figure out a long-term plan for Gaza, which is not going to be simple, especially because we have 170 or 180 men, women, and children in cages, in Gaza under this savage regime.
Well, and I think that we have to consider that the end of the containment policy. This was wrong from the very, very beginning. We were against it. I was against it. I always said that if you are cajoling and caressing the beast, it doesn't mean that the beast will be civilized. And this is the price that we are paying for such a foolness. We thought that we could calm Hamas and change its policy, its covenant that calls for the destruction of the state of Israel in paragraph 2. We thought that we could deal with Hamas. We thought that in the last military encounter between us and the jihad, we managed not to touch Hamas, because Hamas is not interested in waging a war against Israel. This was definitely a concept. I don't know who was the engine behind it, and it's the same policy of containment towards Hisbah. We had Hisbah in 2006 after the war with less than 10,000 missiles, and now we find Hisbah with almost 200,000 missiles, with 100,000 fighters, and we are just provoking us on the border and judging that on a certain day they could surprise us and reach Jerusalem. So I mean, really, this is the situation where we are. It's a wake-up call, and it's good. And finally, unfortunately, it's good it happens right now and not too late.
A deadly wake-up call, a bloody wake-up call, but a wake-up call nonetheless. And according to Dr. Neriah, who's been there on the ground in all of these different countries for 45 years, we should take heed at his warnings and move forward. And we'll have these discussions at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs Wartime Diplomacy Center every day as we go forward. And we'll have Dr. Neriah back again to create regional context for what's going on. You'll only find this here, ladies and gentlemen, and we're very pleased and honored to be able to bring this to you.
There's one question.
One question. Oh, there's one
We have
question.
one-
I've got to
Okay.
stop it right now because I've got to go to another Zoom. Jacques Neriah, thank you ever so much for your time. Thank you, our audience. We'll see you tomorrow at the same time, 4 o'clock Israel time, 4 o'clock,
4
yes,
o'clock, yeah.
9 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, and 6 o'clock in California. Thank you. And in London, 2 hours before us.
Yep, 2 hours.
Okay,
2 hours
thank
in the
you.
afternoon.
And in Rome, 1 hour before us. Good to see everyone. Thank you so much.
Australia
Everyone,
is the
stay
middle of
safe.
the night.
Thank you all so
Goodbye,
much.
everyone.
Bye-bye.